Humans talk too much. That was the first thing we learned about them. Not from our own observations, mind you, but from the Valkyrie. Those pretentious six-limbed gossips had encountered humans 3 cycles before us and couldn't wait to warn the entire galactic concord about the chattering primates from Sola 3. They never shut up, Ambassador Grell of the Valkyrie had told our Council of Elders, always talking, explaining, questioning. It's exhausting. I remember sitting in that council chamber, my outer membranes still moist with youth, wondering what kind of species could possibly annoy the Valkyrie. The same Valkyrie who held annual poetry competitions that lasted for 60 consecutive days. The irony was not lost on me. My name is Ziv Tuyorl, Senior Cultural Interpreter for the Lemonian Diplomatic Corps. That's a fancy way of saying I'm the one who has to figure out what aliens are really thinking when they say things they don't mean, which in my experience is approximately 94% of the time. "You are being summoned, Interpreter Tori," came the gravelly voice of my assistant Plex. He stood in the doorway of my meditation pod, his eye stalks twitching with what I recognized as anxiety. "By whom?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Nobody summoned a senior interpreter except one person. "High Chancellor Vox," Plex confirmed, his secondary arms ringing together. "The human delegation has arrived." I sighed, releasing a small cloud of stress pheromones that made Plex take a step back. "Wonderful. I suppose they have already offended someone?" "Not exactly." Plex's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's what's strange. They have been here for 6 hours, and the lead human hasn't said a word." Now that was interesting. The Lemonian spaceport wasn't what you'd call impressive by Concord standards. We weren't technological slouches, but we preferred to invest in practical comforts rather than shiny architecture. The landing bay where the human ship docked was functional, clean, and about as exciting as a hibernation pod. High Chancellor Vox was easy to spot, towering over everyone with her ceremonial head crest fully extended. This wasn't a good sign. Vox only displayed full crest when she was either extremely pleased or dangerously annoyed. Based on the rapid color fluctuations along her neck membranes, I was betting on the latter. "Interpreter Toril," she hummed in our formal greeting tone. "Your presence honors us." Translation: "Where have you been?" "The honor is mine to serve, High Chancellor," I replied, bowing at precisely the correct angle to show respect without submission. "I came as soon as I received your invitation." Translation: "I'm not at your beck and call." Vox's inner eyelids flickered. "The humans arrived early." "So I have heard. 6 hours ago?" 6 hours and 22 minutes, she corrected, because Vox was nothing if not precise. "And their leader, this Ambassador Mei Takahashi, has spoken exactly 8 words since arriving." I couldn't hide my surprise. 8? Total? Her ship requested docking clearance. When granted, she said, "Thank you for welcoming us to Lemonia, Chancellor Vox." That's it. 8 words, then silence. What about the other humans? They follow her lead. They respond when directly addressed but volunteer nothing. Vox's head crest twitched in frustration. It's unnerving. Where are they now? In the diplomatic quarters. Ambassador Takahashi requested time to, as she put it, acclimate to our environment. The delegation includes 4 humans total. The ambassador, 2 aides, and someone they call a cultural attaché. A cultural attaché. That was my job. Were they trying to replace me already? "I'd like to meet them," I said. Vox made the Lemonian gesture of approval, her primary hands forming a perfect circle. "That's why I called you. Something isn't right. The Valkyrie said humans never stop talking, yet these ones barely speak. I need to know if they are plotting something. Or maybe," I suggested, "the Valkyrie were exaggerating." Vox dismissed this with a flick of her secondary hand. "The Valkyrie exaggerate everything except threats. If they said humans talk too much, then these humans are deliberately hiding something by staying silent." I wasn't convinced, but arguing with Vox was like trying to persuade a gravity well to release you. Pointless and likely to end with you being crushed. The diplomatic quarters were located in our government district, a series of dome-shaped structures connected by transparent tubes that showcased the purple-hued forests of our capital city. As Plex and I approached the human quarters, I reviewed what little we knew about human physiology and culture. Bipedal mammals. Short-lived by our standards, averaging only 80–100 cycles, remarkable adaptability. confusing social structures, prone to creating art about impossible scenarios, and apparently talkative except when they weren't. "Should I announce you?" Plex asked as we reached the entrance. "No," I decided. "Let's observe first." The reception area of the diplomatic quarters featured a transparent wall, allowing visitors to be seen before they were admitted. It was supposedly for security, but really we Lomonians just like to get a good look at who we are dealing with. Through the clear barrier, I could see 3 humans seated around what we had approximated as a human-style meeting table. They appeared to be communicating, but not verbally. Their hands moved rapidly, forming shapes and patterns in the air between them. "Sign language," Plex whispered, his datapad displaying information. "A visual communication method using hand gestures. According to our database, humans developed multiple such languages for those who cannot hear or speak. But these humans can speak," I noted. "They have chosen not to." The humans suddenly stopped their hand movements. One of them, a male with dark skin and close-cropped hair, looked directly at us. He raised a hand in what our database identified as a greeting gesture, then approached the entry panel. The barrier slid open. "Interpreter Twirl," the human said with a slight bow. "We have been expecting you. I'm Dr. Joseph Kato, cultural attaché to Ambassador Takahashi." So this was my counterpart. He was shorter than I expected. Though humans generally were small compared to Lemonians, his voice was measured and pleasant, with none of the excessive volume our briefings had warned about. "Dr. Kato," I replied with a formal greeting gesture. "This is my assistant, Plex. Chancellor Vox requested that I meet with your delegation." "Of course," Dr. Kato said. "Please come in. Ambassador Takahashi is preparing for tonight's welcome ceremony, but she asked me to provide any assistance you might need." The other 2 humans at the table stood as we entered. One was female, with pale skin and hair the color of our sunset sky. The other was male, with features that suggested genetic heritage from multiple human regions. "This is Lisa Parker, our diplomatic security officer, and Marco Vargas, our xenobiologist," Dr. Kato introduced them. Both humans gave simple nods of acknowledgement. "Where is Ambassador Takahashi?" I asked. "Meditating," Parker replied. Her voice was crisp, efficient. "It's part of her pre-meeting ritual." Interesting. Meditation was a universal concept, it seemed. "I understand your ambassador has been reserved since arriving," I said, choosing my words carefully. Dr. Keto's face formed what humans call a smile, though our briefings indicated this expression could mean anything from happiness to discomfort to imminent aggression. "Ambassador Takahashi believes in the power of listening," he said, "particularly when first meeting a new species. She prefers to understand before being understood." The Valkyrie gave us a different impression of humans. I noted. All 3 humans exchanged glances. Parker made a sound, a short, sharp exhalation that might have been amusement. "The Valkyrie delegation we encountered was led by Ambassador Jurl," Dr. Kato explained. "Their communication style clashed with our previous ambassador's approach." "Previous ambassador?" "Yes, Ambassador Benjamin Morris was our first contact specialist. He believed in what he called enthusiastic engagement, talking through every possible topic to find common ground." Vargas, the xenobiologist, spoke for the first time. "It drove the Valkyrie absolutely nuts." Parker shot him a look, and he quickly added, "That is to say, it created cultural friction." "Ambassador Morris was reassigned after the Valkyrie incident," Dr. Kato continued. "Our government realized we needed a different approach. Ambassador Takahashi specializes in non-verbal communication and deep listening." Now things were starting to make sense. The humans had adapted their diplomatic strategy based on their failure with the Valkyrie. That showed a level of self-awareness many species in the Concord lack. "I would very much like to meet Ambassador Takahashi," I said. Dr. Kato nodded. "She requested to meet you as well, but privately. If you are available, she can see you in 1 hour." "I will return then," I agreed. As Plex and I left the human quarters, my mind was buzzing with questions. Why would the ambassador want to meet me alone? What was the purpose of this listening strategy? And most importantly, what did the humans really want from Lamonia? "They seem normal," Plex said as we walked back through the transparent tube. "Too normal," I replied. "No species adapts their core diplomatic approach so quickly without a compelling reason." "You think they are hiding something?" I clicked my mandibles in our version of a shrug. Everyone's hiding something. Hux. The question is whether what they are hiding is dangerous to us. When I returned to meet Ambassador Takahashi, I went alone. Plex protested. Of course, protocol suggested a minimum of 2 diplomatic staff for first meetings, but I overruled him. If the ambassador wanted privacy, I would honor that request, while taking appropriate precautions. Dr. Kato met me at the entrance and escorted me to a small garden room that had been set up within the diplomatic quarters. It was a thoughtful touch. Humans had brought some of their own plant life, arranged around a simple stone bench. Ambassador Takahashi appreciates natural settings for important conversations, Dr. Kato explained. She will join you shortly. Would you like some water? We have analyzed your biochemistry and can provide compatible refreshments. No, thank you, I replied, more out of caution than distrust. Dr. Kato nodded, then left. I took the opportunity to examine the garden more closely. The plants were unfamiliar, some with broad green leaves, others with delicate structures producing small, colored growth extensions. Flowers, I recalled from our database, humans found them aesthetically pleasing and sometimes presented them as gifts. They are called bonsai trees and orchids. The voice behind me was soft but clear. I turned to find a human female standing in the garden entrance. She was smaller than the others I'd met, with facial features suggesting Eastern Earth ancestry according to our database. Her dark hair was arranged in a simple style, and she wore clothing in muted blues that reminded me of our deeper oceans. Ambassador Takahashi, I said, performing the formal greeting gesture. She returned the gesture with surprising accuracy, then spoke, Senior Interpreter Toral, thank you for meeting with me privately. That made 16 words total since her arrival. I was counting. The honor is mine, I replied automatically. Your garden is interesting. It's a small piece of earth, she said, moving to stand beside one of the miniature trees. Creating familiar spaces helps us adapt to new environments. Do Lemonians practice anything similar when traveling? We carry resonance stones from our hatching grounds, I found myself answering. They vibrate at frequencies that remind us of home. She nodded, seemingly absorbing this information. Then she simply waited. The silence stretched between us, neither uncomfortable nor comfortable, just present. I realized she was employing a tactic our own negotiators used, creating a silence that the other party would feel compelled to fill. It was surprisingly effective coming from a human. I'd been told their species found silence uncomfortable. 2 could play this game. I remained silent, observing her. After nearly 2 minutes, an eternity in diplomatic conversation, she smiled. You are patient, she said. That's good. Patience is rare in the universe. As is a human who doesn't fill every moment with words, I countered. The Valkyrie warned us otherwise. The Valkyrie met a different human, she said simply. We learn from our mistakes. She gestured to the bench. Please, sit with me. I adjusted my posture to accommodate the human furniture. Ambassador Takahashi sat beside me, leaving appropriate space between us. Do you know why we sought contact with Lemonia specifically? Interpreter Toral, she asked. Your people seek trading partners, I replied. Our location near the Schism Belt makes us valuable for ships wanting to avoid hegemony territory. She shook her head slightly. That's what your government assumes, and we haven't corrected them. But it's not the primary reason. Now this was intriguing. Then why? Because of what you are, she said. Cultural interpreters. Your species has the highest success rate for cross-species communication in the known galaxy. You understand nuance in a way few others do. I felt my membranes flush with unexpected pride. It was true. Lemonian interpreters were highly sought after throughout the Concord, but few species acknowledged this directly. We need your help, Ambassador Takahashi continued. Humanity is in danger, and we don't have the skills to navigate what's coming. What danger? I asked, my professional caution immediately reasserting itself. If this is about the hegemony expansion, it's about the Zekel, she interrupted. My blood turned cold. The Zekel were not a topic discussed in polite company, let alone diplomatic meetings. An ancient species from the galactic core, they communicated in ways few could comprehend and had a reputation for eliminating civilizations that annoyed them. Most species pretended they didn't exist, which seemed to suit the Zekel fine. How do you even know that name? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper despite ourselves being alone. "We found their probes in our outer solar system," she replied calmly. "3 of them. Watch. Impossible. The Zekel haven't been active for thousands of cycles. They are active now." Ambassador Takahashi's face remained composed, but I detected the subtle signs of stress in her posture. And according to what little information we could gather from the Concord archives, the appearance of their probes is typically followed by either first contact or extinction. I stood abruptly. This was beyond my authority. "You need to speak with the High Chancellor immediately." "No," Ambassador Takahashi remained seated. "That would be a mistake. The Zekel value discretion. Public acknowledgement of their presence tends to accelerate their response timeline." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because we have been studying everything we could find about them since discovering the probes 6 months ago. And we found exactly one species who successfully established peaceful relations with them." A cold realization washed over me. "The Kethri." She nodded. "The Kethri, your evolutionary cousins from the neighboring star system. They met the Zekel 8,000 years ago and somehow avoided destruction. And then they disappeared from all Concord communications for 5 centuries. The Kethri were indeed related to Lemonians, though distantly. Our myths spoke of them as wise elders who ascended to a higher plane of existence. The truth, as usual, was probably less poetic. "The Kethri are extinct," I said. "They died out 3,000 cycles ago. But their diplomatic archives remain," Ambassador Takahashi countered, "stored in the Concord's restricted historical database. Archives that detail exactly how they communicated with the Zarkal. And you want access to those archives," I concluded. "Archives that even I don't have clearance to view." "Yes." For the first time, Ambassador Takahashi looked genuinely vulnerable. "Humanity is young." Interpreter Torla. "We are brash and loud and make mistakes. The Valkyrie weren't wrong about us. But we are learning. We are trying to listen now, before it's too late." I sank back down onto the bench, my mind racing. If the humans were telling the truth about the Zekel probes, their situation was dire. But giving unauthorized access to the Kethri archives was treason by Lemonian law. "What you are asking is impossible," I said finally. Ambassador Takahashi didn't argue or plead. She simply reached into her pocket and withdrew a small data crystal, placing it between us on the bench. "This contains all our information on the Zekel probes," she said quietly, "including their communications attempts. I'm giving it to you freely, whether you help us or not, because if humanity is destroyed, someone should know why." I stared at the crystal. Sharing information about Zekel contact violated at least 3 Concord protocols. The humans were either extremely naive or extremely desperate. "Why me?" I asked. "Why not go directly to the Council of Elders?" "Because you are a listener," she replied simply. "Like me. You observe before you judge. It's why you are here alone, breaking protocol, trying to understand us before reporting back." I couldn't deny it. Everything about this meeting was irregular, driven by my own curiosity as much as duty. "I need time to consider this," I said carefully, neither accepting nor rejecting the crystal. Ambassador Takahashi stood. "Of course. The welcome ceremony begins in 3 hours. Perhaps we could continue our conversation afterward." As she turned to leave, I found myself asking one more question. "The sign language your team was using earlier, was that for security reasons?" She paused at the garden entrance. "No, it was for me. I was born unable to hear. The implants I have now were only placed when I was 12 years old. You were chosen as humanity's ambassador because I learned to listen with more than ears," she finished. "I listen with eyes, with skin, with instinct, and because I know the value of silence." She gave a small, genuine smile. "Sometimes the most important things are never spoken aloud." After she left, I sat alone in the human garden for a long time, looking at the data crystal that could change everything. Eventually, I picked it up, secured it in my personal vault pouch, and headed back to my offices to prepare for the welcome ceremony. The grand reception hall was Lemonia's one concession to architectural showing off. With its vaulted ceilings made from the iridescent shells of extinct sea creatures and gravity-defying spiral columns, it was designed to impress visitors while reminding them of our ancient culture. High Chancellor Vox stood on the central platform, her ceremonial robes catching the light from 1,000 floating illumination spheres. The full Council of Elders flanked her along with representatives from every major Lemonian clan. This was a bigger reception than usual for a new species. Vox was clearly making a statement about the importance of this relationship. I took my place among the senior government officials, nodding to colleagues I recognized. Plex hovered nervously at my side, still upset that I'd met the human ambassador alone. "Did she actually speak to you?" he whispered. "Yes, Plex. Humans can speak," I replied dryly. "They just don't always choose to." "What did she want?" Before I could formulate a suitably vague response, the announcement tones rang through the hall, signaling the arrival of the human delegation. They entered in formal procession. First came Dr. Cato and Officer Parker, walking side by side. Behind them came Vargas, carrying what appeared to be a ceremonial container, a gift, presumably, and finally Ambassador Takahashi, wearing a formal garment of deep blue with geometric patterns in silver thread. What struck me most was their composure. According to our briefings, humans were an expressive species, prone to visible emotional displays, yet these four maintained a serene dignity that would have impressed even the stoic Patari. High Chancellor Vox stepped forward as the humans reached the central platform. "Ambassador Takahashi," she intoned in the formal greeting. "Lamonia welcomes Earth to our shared future. May our paths join in prosperity and wisdom." This was where, traditionally, the visiting ambassador would launch into a prepared speech about mutual cooperation, historical moments, and bright futures. Everyone braced for it, even those who believed the quiet human reports. Ambassador Takahashi stepped forward, looked directly at High Chancellor Vox, and said just 7 words. "Thank you for your generosity and your wisdom." Then she bowed deeply, remaining down for a full 3 seconds before straightening. I could feel the ripple of surprise move through the assembly. Even Vox's crest twitched in what might have been confusion. After an awkward moment, Vargas stepped forward, presenting the container to Vox. "A gift from Earth," he explained. "Something we hope symbolizes our approach to this new relationship." Vox accepted it with appropriate ceremony, then handed it to an aide to open. The container's lid was lifted to reveal a simple object. 2 curved pieces of metal joined in the center with padded ends. "It's called a stethoscope," Dr. Cato explained, "an ancient human medical tool used to listen to the internal sounds of the body, particularly the heart." "Fascinating," Vox said, clearly not fascinated at all. "And what does this symbolize?" Ambassador Takahashi spoke again, her voice calm but carrying throughout the hall. "It symbolizes our commitment to listen first, to the heart of Lamonia, to the pulse of your culture, to the rhythm of your needs and concerns. Before humans speak, we wish to truly hear." The murmuring in the hall grew. This was not how diplomatic receptions typically proceeded. Vox, ever the skilled politician, recovered quickly. "A thoughtful gesture, Ambassador. Lamonia appreciates Earth's unique approach. Now perhaps you would like to address the Assembly regarding your hopes for our partnership." It was a direct invitation to make a speech, one that couldn't politely be declined. Ambassador Takahashi nodded. "With respect, High Chancellor, I would rather hear your people's questions. What do Lamonians wish to know about humans? I am here to listen and respond." This was unprecedented. Visiting dignitaries didn't take questions at welcome ceremonies. That came later, in controlled settings with prepared answers. Vox's neck membranes flushed dark purple, a sign of either intense irritation or grudging respect. With her it was often hard to tell the difference. "Very well," she said after a moment. "Council members may address questions to Earth's ambassador." What followed was remarkable. For the next 2 hours, Ambassador Takahashi stood calmly as Lamonian officials fired increasingly complex questions at her. Rather than the platitudes and deflections typical of such events, she gave thoughtful, direct answers, sometimes consulting briefly with her team, but more often responding from her own knowledge. Yes, humans had nearly destroyed their planet before achieving space travel. No, they did not have unified global governance, but rather a federation of nation-states. Yes, they had religious and philosophical diversity that sometimes led to conflicts. No, they did not consider themselves superior to other intelligent species. With each honest answer, I watched the atmosphere in the room shift. Initial skepticism gave way to curiosity, then to something approaching respect. The humans weren't hiding behind diplomatic facades, they were simply present, authentic in a way rarely seen in interspecies relations. Then came the question that changed everything. Elder Jax, our most conservative council member, rose from his seat. Ambassador, what does Earth seek from the galactic concord that it cannot provide for itself? It was a blunt question that essentially asked, why should we bother with you? Ambassador Takahashi paused longer than she had before. She glanced briefly in my direction, then answered, protection. She said simply, knowledge, wisdom. Earth stands at a crossroads that many of your civilizations faced millennia ago. We have the technology to destroy ourselves and the curiosity to attract attention from forces we don't understand. We seek teachers as much as trading partners. The hall fell silent. This level of vulnerability from a newly contacted species was unheard of. Most arrived projecting strength, hiding weaknesses, posturing for advantage. High Chancellor Vox leaned forward. What forces do you speak of, Ambassador? I tensed. She couldn't possibly be planning. 3 months ago, Ambassador Takahashi said clearly, we detected unknown devices in our outer solar system, devices that watch, listen, and occasionally transmit signals we cannot decipher. We believe we are being evaluated. The silence in the hall became deafening. No one moved. No one breathed. By whom? Vox asked, though I could tell from her expression she already suspected the answer. Ambassador Takahashi met her gaze steadily. We don't know, but we hoped Lamonia might help us find out. It was masterfully done. She'd revealed the presence of Watchers without naming the Zakal directly, placing the diplomatic ball squarely in our court. Elder Jax sputtered in outrage. This is highly irregular. If Earth is under observation by advanced entities, protocols dictate we offer assistance to Concord applicants facing external threats. Vox interrupted smoothly. Ambassador Takahashi, we will convene a special session tomorrow to address this matter. In the meantime, please consider yourselves honored guests of Lamonia. With that, Vox declared the ceremony complete, and the assembly began to disperse. I noticed several elders huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers, while others made direct paths to communication terminals. As I moved through the crowd toward the exit, I felt a light touch on my arm. Ambassador Takahashi had somehow navigated through the throng of much larger Lamonians to reach me. A word, Interpreter Tourol, if you have a moment. I nodded, leading her to a small alcove where we could speak with some privacy. That was quite a performance, I said, revealing the probes without mentioning who they belonged to. Was it the right decision? She asked, and I was surprised to hear genuine uncertainty in her voice. I don't know, I admitted, but it forces our government to respond. By tomorrow, half the Concord will know something's watching Earth. Will they help us? I considered this carefully. The Concord rarely acts quickly or decisively. Committees will be formed, studies will be commissioned, debates will rage for cycles. We don't have cycles, she said quietly. Based on historical patterns, we estimate we have less than 1 Earth year before the Zakil make their decision about us. What exactly do you want from me, Ambassador? Access to the Cathri archives, she said without hesitation, and your expertise in interpreting what we find there. I should have reported this conversation immediately. Should have walked away and told Vox everything. Instead, I found myself asking, why should I risk my position, possibly my life, to help humans? Ambassador Takahashi didn't answer immediately. She looked out at the dispersing crowd of Lamonians, studying them with those observant eyes. Because we are alike, you and I, she finally said. We both know that survival sometimes depends on understanding what isn't being said. The Zalkal are communicating with us, Interpreter Toral. We just don't understand the message. Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the grand reception hall. Emergency lights pulsed in sequence, and security personnel suddenly appeared at all exits. What's happening? Ambassador Takahashi asked, tension evident in her voice. My communication implant buzzed with an incoming high-priority message. I accessed it and felt my blood run cold. It's a lockdown, I said. Something's entered our atmosphere without authorization. Multiple somethings. As if on cue, the massive viewing screen at the far end of the hall activated, showing a live feed from our orbital defense system. Sleek, obsidian objects were descending through Lamonia's upper atmosphere, moving in perfect formation. How many? Ambassador Takahashi asked, her voice steady despite the circumstances. I counted the objects on the screen. 7. Zikal contact vessels, she whispered. Just like the historical records described. Impossible, I said automatically. The Zalkal never initiate direct contact. They observe, they judge, they occasionally destroy. But they are coming here because of us, she interrupted, because I mentioned the probes publicly. You were right, it accelerated their timeline. Around us, chaos was erupting as Lemonians reacted to the unprecedented situation. Security forces were surrounding the human delegation, while High Chancellor Vox shouted orders from the central platform. Ambassador Takahashi turned to me, her expression grave but determined. Interpreter Turlan, I need your answer now. Will you help us understand what they are saying before it's too late? I looked from her to the screens showing the approaching Zikidal vessels, then back again. In that moment I made the decision that would change everything. For Lemonia, for Earth, and for the entire Concord. Yes, I said, but we need to move quickly. If the historical accounts are accurate, we have less than 3 hours before they make contact. As we rushed from the hall surrounded by security personnel and confused officials, I couldn't help wondering, what happens when two species who prioritize listening finally meet? And what would the rest of us hear in the silence between them? The first human diplomat didn't speak. She listened. And somehow, against all logic and precedent, I found myself believing that might just be enough to save us all. Chaos has a sound. It's not the shouting or the alarms or the pounding of feet on polished floors. It's the underlying frequency, that particular pitch of panic that cuts through rational thought like a plasma torch through ice. The Grand Reception Hall had descended into precisely that kind of chaos. Security forces formed protective barriers around council members while administrative staff frantically accessed emergency protocols that hadn't been used in generations. Through it all, High Chancellor Vox's voice boomed over the communication system, demanding order with the kind of authority that usually worked. It wasn't working now. This way, I told Ambassador Takahashi, guiding her toward a service corridor hidden behind a decorative wall panel. One advantage of being a senior interpreter was knowing all the private pathways through government buildings. Supposedly they existed for diplomatic emergencies. In practice, they were mostly used for avoiding tedious conversations with foreign dignitaries. Today, they would serve their actual purpose. What about my team? Takahashi asked, glancing back at the 3 other humans now surrounded by Lemonian security personnel. They will be protected, I assured her, though I had no way of knowing if that was true. Right now we need access to information more than we need additional people. She nodded once, decisive, then followed me into the narrow passage. The door sealed behind us, muffling the chaos of the reception hall. The service corridor was dimly lit with bioluminescent strips that cast everything in a pale blue glow. Where are we going? She asked, as we moved swiftly through the passage. The ancestral archives, I replied. It's where the Cathri records are stored, along with all historical data deemed too sensitive for the general database. Will we have access? I made a sound that humans might have mistaken for a laugh. No, but I know someone who does. The corridor branched multiple times as we descended deeper into the government complex. With each level, the architecture grew older, transitioning from modern composite materials to carved stone and eventually to the packed earth tunnels that predated our modern civilization. Few Lemonians ever ventured this deep beneath the capital. These tunnels are ancient, Takahashi observed, running her hand along the smooth, packed earth wall. 10,000 cycles, give or take, I confirmed. Our ancestors built them during the Great Swarm invasions. The deepest levels connect to natural cave systems that extend for hundreds of kilometers. Strategic fallback positions? I glanced at her, surprised by her immediate grasp of the military implications. Yes, though they haven't been used for that purpose in millennia. On Earth we have similar structures. Bunkers built during our last global conflict repurposed as data centers and emergency government facilities. Your species plans for disaster even in times of peace, I noted. Especially in times of peace, she corrected. That's when you have the luxury of preparation. We reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 branches. I hesitated, trying to recall the correct path. It had been many cycles since I'd visited this level. Problem? Takahashi asked. Just getting my bearings, I admitted. The archives are not exactly on any official map. She didn't question this, just waited patiently while I oriented myself. After a moment I chose the rightmost passage. This should lead to the outer chamber of the archives. My contact usually works the night cycle, so we may need to wait. I don't think waiting is our best option right now, Takahashi said, glancing upward as if she could see through the layers of earth and stone to the Zakal ships descending from orbit. Point taken. We continued in silence for several minutes until the tunnel widened into a small antechamber. Unlike the rough-hewn passages, this space was finished with polished stone and illuminated by modern lighting panels. A single desk sat against the far wall, behind which was an imposing metal door with no visible handle or control panel. The desk was empty. "Your contact isn't here," Takahashi observed unnecessarily. "So it seems," I muttered, approaching the desk. "This complicates things. Can you call them?" I shook my head. Communications are likely monitored during a security lockdown. Even if I could reach Jern, asking him to meet us here would raise too many questions. Jern Kelvo, junior archivist. His family has maintained the ancestral archives for 8 generations. Ambassador Takahashi surveyed the room. "Is there another way in?" "Not without Jern's access codes. The door requires both biometric authentication and—" "Zivertural, you smell like trouble," came a gravelly voice from behind us. I spun around to find Jern standing in the tunnel entrance, his facial ridges furrowed in what might have been amusement or annoyance. With Jern it was often difficult to tell the difference. "Jern!" I exclaimed. "I was just looking for you." "Clearly," he drawled, entering the antechamber and eyeing Ambassador Takahashi with obvious curiosity.
"Along with your
human friend. During a planetary security lockdown, how delightfully suspicious." Jern was smaller than most Lemonians, with a hunched posture from too many cycles bent over ancient texts. His hide had faded to a pale lavender with age, though he wasn't as elderly as he liked to pretend. "This is Ambassador Mei Takahashi of Earth," I introduced. "Ambassador, this is Junior Archivist Jern Kelvo, the most knowledgeable person on Lemonia regarding our ancient history, and the most discreet," Jern added pointedly. "A quality that seems in short supply today. The entire complex is buzzing about unidentified vessels entering our atmosphere, and here you are, sneaking around with an alien diplomat. One might almost think the two events were connected." "They are connected," Takahashi said before I could formulate a suitably vague response. "The vessels belong to the Zaktil. They are here because of us, because of Earth." Jern's expression shifted instantly from mild curiosity to alarm. His neck membranes paled to nearly white. "The Zekad, that's not possible. They haven't been active in this sector for 3,000 cycles." I finished. "Not since the Kethri disappeared." Jern's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you after, Ziv?" "We need access to the Kethri diplomatic archives," I said, "specifically their records regarding Zakal communication methods. Those archives are restricted by Concord Security Protocol 87 Alpha," Jern stated flatly. "Access requires approval from the Council of Elders, the High Chancellor, and a Concord security representative. Even I don't have authorization." 7 Zekal vessels will make surface contact in less than 3 hours, Ambassador Takahashi interrupted, her voice calm but insistent. "By then we need to understand how to communicate with them. The Kethri succeeded where others failed. We need to know how." Jern stared at her for a long moment, then at me. "You believe this human?" "I do," I said simply. "Why would the Zixile break thousands of cycles of isolation to contact Lemonia now?" "Not Lemonia," Takahashi clarified. "Earth. They have been observing us for months. Our mentioning their probes publicly seems to have accelerated their timeline." Jern made a low whistling sound, our equivalent of a heavy sigh. "So you have potentially triggered first contact with the most dangerous species in known space, and now you want me to violate security protocols to help you prepare for it?" "That about sums it up," I agreed. To my surprise, Jern chuckled. "I always said you'd either end up as High Chancellor or in an execution chamber, Zav." He moved behind his desk and placed his hand on a concealed scanner. "Good thing I have always had a fondness for lost causes." The massive door slid open silently, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. "The Ancestral Archives," Jern announced with a theatrical sweep of his arm. 8 million cycles of Lemonian history, plus whatever we have managed to scavenge, steal, or borrow from other civilizations." His expression turned serious. "Including the Kethri records, which I remind you, I am explicitly forbidden from showing to anyone, especially foreign diplomats. Noted, I said, already moving past him into the archive. The chamber was vast, stretching far beyond what the external dimensions of the antechamber suggested was possible. Shelves and storage units of varying designs filled the space, organized in concentric circles around a central work area. Some contained physical artifacts, ancient scrolls, data crystals, and preservation containers, while others housed holographic projectors displaying cataloged information. The Kethri section is this way, Jern said, leading us toward the eastern quadrant of the chamber. It's smaller than you might expect. Most of their knowledge was lost during their transition. Transition? Takahashi asked. The Kethri didn't exactly go extinct, I explained as we walked. According to the few records we have, they underwent some form of species-wide transformation about 3,000 cycles ago. Some say they ascended to a higher plane of existence. Others believe they merged their consciousness with artificial systems. A few conspiracy theorists insist they were absorbed by the Zakalat themselves. The truth is probably less dramatic, Jern added. More likely they suffered some catastrophic biological or social collapse and the survivors integrated into other conquered species. There are genetic markers in several modern populations that suggest Kethri heritage. We reached a sealed section cordoned off by a shimmering energy field. Beyond it I could see a collection of ancient-looking artifacts arranged on specialized preservation platforms. Jern approached a control panel and input a complex sequence. I'm granting temporary access to this section only. The system will record your presence, so there's no point in denying you were here when the authorities eventually come asking. Understood, I said. Thank you, Jern. He grunted non-committally. I will monitor the security feeds from my station. If anyone approaches the archive entrance, I will warn you. He fixed Ambassador Takahashi with a penetrating stare. I hope whatever you find here is worth the risk. Human. After Jern departed, Ambassador Takahashi and I passed through the now deactivated barrier into the Kethri section. These artifacts are incredibly old, she observed, examining a crystal sphere mounted on a pedestal. The newest items are at least 3,000 cycles old, I confirmed. But we are looking for something specific, the diplomatic communication protocols they established with the Zikadais. We split up to search the collection more efficiently. I focused on the data storage devices while Takahashi examined the physical artifacts. After several minutes she called me over to a display case containing what appeared to be a simple metal disc about the size of a Lemonian hand. What is this? She asked. I studied the artifact and the accompanying information panel. It's labeled as a resonance communicator, believed to be of Kethri design, used for non-linguistic information exchange with non-compatible entities. Non-linguistic? Takahashi leaned closer to the disc. You mean it doesn't translate words? Apparently not. According to this, it transmits and receives patterns, frequencies. The description is vague. Ambassador Takahashi's expression brightened with sudden understanding. It's not translating language, it's bypassing it entirely. Communicating through mathematical patterns and resonant frequencies. She turned to me, excitement evident in her posture. The Zetadal don't use language as we understand it. They communicate through complex patterns, mathematical, visual, auditory, perhaps even gravitational. The Kethri figured out how to engage with them on that level, without trying to force their communication into linguistic structures. How could you possibly know that? I asked. Because it's consistent with what we observed from their probes, she explained. The signals they transmitted weren't language. They were pure pattern. Repeating sequences with subtle variations. We thought they were encrypted or somehow damaged. But what if they were the message itself? I considered this. It made a certain sense. The Zakal had encountered thousands of species over their long history, each with different biological and cognitive structures. Developing a universal communication method based on mathematical patterns rather than language would be efficient. Can we use this device? I asked, gesturing to the resonance communicator. I don't know. Ambassador Takahashi examined it closely. We'd need to understand how it functions first. I accessed the archive's catalog system through a nearby terminal. There must be documentation, research notes, usage instructions, something. After several minutes of searching, I found a reference to a sealed data crystal containing operational protocols for Zikal Communication Suite. The catalog listed its location in a high-security storage unit near the center of the archive. "This way," I told Takahashi, leading her toward the indicated unit. The storage unit was a featureless black cube approximately 1 meter on each side. No visible access panel or opening mechanism was apparent. "How do we get in?" Takahashi asked. Before I could respond, a message from Jern appeared on my communicator. "Security forces are conducting a level-by-level search of the complex. Estimated time to reach the archives, 15 minutes. Whatever you are doing, do it quickly." I relayed this information to Takahashi, who nodded grimly. "Then we don't have time for subtlety." To my surprise, she reached out and simply placed her hand against the surface of the cube. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the material beneath her palm began to glow with a soft blue light that spread across the entire surface. "How did you?" I began. "I didn't do anything," she said, looking as surprised as I felt. "It responded to me." The cube's surface rippled like liquid, then parted to reveal a small interior chamber. Floating in the center was a crystalline object about the size of a human thumb. "The data crystal," I breathed. Ambassador Takahashi reached in and carefully removed the crystal. As soon as it left the cube, the opening sealed itself, returning to its featureless state. "Why would it respond to you?" I asked. "A human shouldn't be able to access Kethri technology." She shook her head, equally confused. "I don't know, maybe it's not keyed to species but to some other parameter." Before we could discuss it further, the archive's main lighting system flashed red, Jern's warning that we had even less time than anticipated. "We need to go," I said urgently. "Now." "What about the resonance communicator?" "We should take it. We can't remove artifacts from the archive, the security systems would immediately—" I was interrupted by a loud alarm and the sound of the main archive door sliding open. "Too late." "Hide," I hissed, pulling Ambassador Takahashi behind a large storage unit. From our concealed position, we could see a squad of security personnel entering the archive, led by none other than High Chancellor Vox herself. Jern stood beside her, looking appropriately cowed. "The human ambassador was here?" Vox demanded. "Yes, High Chancellor," Jern replied. "She and Senior Interpreter Tural accessed the Kethri section approximately 20 minutes ago. And you allowed this? During a planetary security lockdown?" Jern's neck membranes darkened with stress. "They were very persuasive, High Chancellor. And given the circumstances, Vox cut him off, "are precisely why such access is forbidden. If the approaching vessels are indeed Zakil, as intelligence now believes, then any unauthorized contact with their historical records could jeopardize our entire species." I felt Takahashi tense beside me. She leaned close and whispered, so quietly I barely heard her, "They are afraid of the Zektil. They don't want contact." She was right. Vox's behavior wasn't just about security protocols. It was about fear. The Lemonian government didn't want to engage with the Zekil at all, preferring to hide and hope they would leave. A strategy that had historically ended poorly for those who attempted it. "Find them," Vox ordered the security team. "Check every section of the archive." The security personnel spread out, methodically searching row by row. It wouldn't take them long to reach our hiding place. I turned to Takahashi, speaking in the barest whisper. "We need a distraction." She nodded, then pointed to the data crystal in her hand and mimed breaking it. I shook my head violently. Breaking the crystal would destroy our only chance of communicating with the Zekali. We needed another option. Takahashi's eyes darted around, then fixed on something above us. She pointed upward, where an ancient ventilation shaft cut through the ceiling of the archive. It was risky. The shaft might not lead anywhere useful, and it would be a tight fit for me, though the smaller human could probably navigate it easily. But we were rapidly running out of alternatives. I nodded my agreement. Takahashi immediately began climbing the storage unit, using its protruding edges as handholds. I followed, my larger frame making the ascent more difficult. As we reached the top, we could hear the security team getting closer. Takahashi examined the ventilation cover, then looked to me for help. I reached up and disengaged the locking mechanism with a practiced twist. Another benefit of knowing the government building's maintenance systems. The cover came loose with a soft click. Takahashi pulled herself up into the shaft with surprising agility. I was halfway through the opening when I heard a shout from below. "There! On top of the historical data storage!" I scrambled fully into the shaft just as energy beams struck the spot where I had been hanging. Takahashi was already crawling forward through the narrow passage. I sealed the vent cover behind us, though it wouldn't slow pursuit for long. "Which way?" she asked, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "Left at the next junction," I replied, accessing my mental map of the complex. If I remember correctly, these maintenance shafts connect to the emergency evacuation system. We moved as quickly as possible through the dusty, confined space. Behind us, I could hear the sounds of pursuit, the ventilation covers being forcibly removed. Orders being shouted. "The Zettel vessels have entered low atmosphere," Takahashi said, checking a small device strapped to her wrist. "My team is sending updates. Landing trajectory indicates they are heading for the Capitol Plaza." "Of course they are," I muttered. "Why pick a nice, isolated landing zone when you can put down right in the middle of the most crowded area?" "They want witnesses," Takahashi said simply. "This isn't just contact. It's a demonstration." We reached a vertical shaft with ladder rungs embedded in the wall. "Up," I directed, 4 levels, then east toward the external service area. As we climbed, I found myself wondering why I was helping this human. I was violating multiple security protocols, disobeying direct orders, and potentially endangering my entire species. All because I believed Ambassador Takahashi's approach to the Zettel had a better chance of success than my own government's fear-driven avoidance. Or perhaps because, for the first time in my long career as an interpreter, I'd met someone who truly understood the importance of listening. We emerged from the maintenance system into an external service area, a small courtyard used for equipment storage and waste disposal. The sky above had taken on a strange purplish hue, an atmospheric effect caused by the Zettel vessels, presumably. "Which way to the Capitol Plaza?" Takahashi asked, orienting herself. "Northeast, about half a kilometer," I replied. "But we can't just walk there. Security forces will be looking for us throughout the city." "We don't have time for subterfuge," she said firmly. "The vessels will land in less than 30 minutes. We need to be there when they arrive." "Why? What exactly do you plan to do with this?" I asked, gesturing to the data crystal she still clutched tightly. "The crystal contains the protocols for operating the resonance communicator." "Right. So we need to get it to one of my team members. Dr. Kito has equipment that can read most data storage formats. If he can extract the protocols, we might be able to replicate the communication method even without the actual K3 device." "That's a lot of ifs and mights," I pointed out. Ambassador Takahashi regarded me with those perceptive eyes of hers. "Do you have a better plan, Interpreter Totaro?" I didn't, and she knew it. "Fine," I conceded, "but we will need transportation. My personal vehicle is in the diplomatic parking structure. If we can reach it without being seen." A familiar voice interrupted from the service area entrance. "You two are really bad at this whole fugitive thing." We spun around to find Plex standing there, looking simultaneously worried and smug. "Plex!" I exclaimed. "How did you find you?" he finished. "You are predictable, Interpreter. When you disappeared from the reception, I knew you'd head for the archives. When security started mobilizing toward the lower levels, I figured you'd try to escape through the service corridors. Are you here to turn us in?" I asked, tensing for potential flight. Plex made an indignant huffing sound. "After serving as your assistant for 12 cycles, give me some credit." He gestured behind him. "I have a transport waiting. Dr. Kato and the rest of the human delegation are already aboard." Takahashi's expression brightened. "Joseph is free?" "How?" "Let's just say security had their hands full with more pressing concerns," Plex replied cryptically. "Now are you coming, or would you prefer to continue crawling through ventilation shafts?" We followed Plex to a transport vehicle idling at the service entrance. As promised, Dr. Kato, Lisa Parker, and Marco Vargas were already inside, along with several pieces of equipment they must have salvaged from their ship. As we boarded, Dr. Kato embraced Ambassador Takahashi briefly. "Glad to see you in one piece, May." "Did you bring the portable analyzer?" she asked without preamble. "Of course." He indicated a sleek device nestled among their equipment. "Though I'm not sure what good it will do without—" She held up the data crystal and his eyes widened. "You found it?" "The K3 communication protocols," she confirmed. "Can you extract the data?" "I can try." He took the crystal and inserted it into his device. "It will take a few minutes to scan the format and adapt." We may not have a few minutes, Parker warned, checking her own monitoring device. The Zek-held vessels are on final approach to the plaza. ETA, 12 minutes. Then get us there in 10, Takahashi instructed Plex, who had taken the pilot's position. The transport lifted smoothly and accelerated into the city's skyways, weaving between buildings with the kind of precision that suggested Plex had either extensive military training or a questionable past. Possibly both. Why didn't security detain you? I asked Dr. Kateo as we sped toward the plaza. They tried, he replied without looking up from his work on the crystal, but when the Zekel vessels began their descent pattern, priorities shifted. Most of the security forces were redirected to evacuate government officials. And you just walked out. Parker smiled thinly. I may have assisted with a convenient distraction. I decided not to ask for details. Got it, Dr. Kato announced suddenly. The crystal contains detailed specifications for the resonance communicator, plus records of the actual communication sessions between the Kathri and the Zekel. Can you make it work? Takahashi asked. He studied the information scrolling across his screen. Maybe. The principles are similar to some experimental communication tech we have been developing. If I can reconfigure our equipment to match these parameters, do it, she ordered. Then turning to me, what will your government do when the Zetka land? Standard first contact protocol would be to establish a security perimeter and attempt to communicate through conventional translation systems, I explained. If that fails, they will likely revert to mathematical sequences, prime numbers, basic equations, the usual approach for unknown species. Which won't work, Takahashi stated flatly. No, I agreed. The Zexla don't communicate that way. If the K3 records are correct, they perceive reality through pattern recognition on a scale we can barely comprehend. Traditional language is meaningless to them. Our transport rounded the final set of buildings, and the Capitol Plaza came into view. It was a vast open space at the heart of the city, normally filled with Lemonians going about their daily business. Now it was eerily empty, evacuated in preparation for the approaching vessels. Empty except for a substantial military presence. Defense forces had established positions around the perimeter, energy weapons deployed and aimed skyward. In the center of the plaza stood High Chancellor Vox, surrounded by the Council of Elders and what appeared to be our top military commanders. They are preparing for confrontation, I said, dismayed but not surprised. We need to land, Ambassador Takahashi declared. Now? Plex looked at me questioningly. I nodded, and he guided the transport toward an open area near the plaza's edge. As we descended, the sky above darkened dramatically. 7 obsidian vessels, each shaped like an elongated tetrahedron, moved into position over the plaza. They made no sound as they hovered, defying physics in a way that made my scientific training protest. Our transport touched down and we quickly disembarked. Security forces immediately took notice, weapons swinging in our direction. Hold position, a commanding voice shouted. High Chancellor Vox had spotted us and was striding in our direction, her ceremonial robes replaced by the more practical uniform of Lemonian leadership. Ambassador Takahashi, she acknowledged coldly, I might have known you'd be involved in this situation. High Chancellor, Takahashi replied calmly. I can explain. There's no time for explanations. Vox cut her off. The Zekal vessels will make contact momentarily. You and your team will remain under guard until this situation is resolved. With respect, Chancellor, I interjected, the ambassador has information crucial to communicating with the Zekalal, information from the Kethri archives. Vox's eyes narrowed dangerously. Information you helped her illegally access. Interpreter Toro, your career and freedom are hanging by the thinnest of threads. Then let them snap, I replied without hesitation. But first, listen to what she has to say. Before Vox could respond, a deep vibration passed through the plaza. Not a sound exactly, but a sensation that resonated in my bones and internal organs. Above us, the Zakpale vessels had begun to descend in perfect synchronization. Chancellor, Dr. Kato called urgently. We have configured our equipment to emulate the Kethri resonance patterns. We can attempt communication, but we need to act now. Vox hesitated, clearly torn between following protocol and taking a chance on the humans' approach. What do you propose? She finally asked. The Zekal don't use language as we understand it, Ambassador Takahashi explained quickly. They communicate through complex mathematical and harmonic patterns. The Cathri developed a method to engage with them on that level. And you can replicate this method? We believe so, yes. Another vibration, stronger this time, passed through the plaza as the Zacalero vessels descended to just 50 meters above the ground. Their surfaces began to shift and flow like liquid metal rearranging itself. Do it, Vox decided. Quickly. Dr. Kato activated his modified equipment. A complex series of tones and harmonics began emanating from the device, creating patterns that seemed to shift and evolve even as I listened to them. It wasn't music exactly, but it had a strange, compelling quality that made my neural pathways fire in unexpected ways. For several tense moments, nothing happened. The Zelkal vessels continued their silent descent, now just 30 meters above the ground. Then, abruptly, they stopped. A responding series of tones, deeper, more complex, with harmonics that seemed to exist at the very edge of perception, emanated from the vessels. "It's working," Dr. Kato exclaimed. "They are responding to the pattern." "What are they saying?" Vox demanded. "It's not saying exactly," Takahashi explained. "It's more like they are completing the pattern we began, acknowledging our attempt to communicate." The exchange continued, our equipment sending pattern sequences, the Zikal vessels responding with increasingly complex variations. I found myself strangely moved by the interaction, though I couldn't have explained why. After several minutes of this exchange, the central Zikal vessel began to descend further, separating from the others. It touched down in the center of the plaza with impossible gentleness, its obsidian surface rippling like disturbed water. "What's happening?" Vox asked, tension evident in her voice. "They are accepting our invitation to direct contact," Ambassador Takahashi replied, her focus never leaving the vessel. "Chancellor, I need to approach them." "Absolutely not," Vox snapped. "I will not allow a foreign diplomat to make first contact with an unknown species on Lemonian soil." "Then come with me," Takahashi suggested calmly. "Let us approach together as representatives of both our worlds." Vox considered this, her crest flaring slightly with agitation. "And Interpreter Tour," she added, glancing at me, "as a neutral third party." I bowed in acknowledgement, secretly relieved. Whatever was about to happen, I wanted to witness it firsthand. The three of us began walking toward the landed vessel, leaving the security forces and the rest of the human team behind. Dr. Kato continued operating his equipment, maintaining the pattern exchange that seemed to be keeping the Zakala receptive. As we drew closer, I could see that the vessel's surface wasn't truly solid. It seemed to exist in a state between matter and energy, constantly shifting yet maintaining its overall form. It was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. We stopped about 5 meters from the vessel. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a portion of the vessel's surface began to flow outward, forming a protrusion that gradually took shape. Not a door or hatch as I'd expected, but something far stranger. A three-dimensional representation of what appeared to be mathematical equations and geometric forms, rendered in the same flowing obsidian material as the vessel itself. "It's a message," Takahashi whispered. "A direct communication." "What does it say?" Vox asked. "It's not saying anything in our sense of the word," I explained, suddenly understanding what I was seeing. "It's showing us how they perceive reality, through pattern and form and mathematical relationship." Ambassador Takahashi took a step forward, then another. She raised her hands not in surrender but in a deliberate geometric shape, fingers spread at precise angles, arms forming a specific configuration. The protrusion from the vessel shifted in response, mirroring her gesture but adding complexity to it. Takahashi adjusted her posture slightly, creating a new configuration that built upon the previous one. This exchange continued for several minutes, a silent conversation conducted entirely through posture, geometry, and pattern. I realized with growing amazement that Takahashi was communicating directly with the Zipkala, without words, without sound, without any traditional language at all. She was listening with her entire being, receiving information through channels most species never even considered. Finally, she turned back to us, her expression both awed and relieved. "They are not here to judge us," she said. "They are here to observe a transition." "What transition?" Vox demanded. "The same one the K3 underwent 3,000 cycles ago," Takahashi explained. "The Zakal don't destroy species they consider interesting, they witness their evolutionary leaps, They have been watching Earth because they detected the beginning of our transition. And now they are here because they believe Lamonia is approaching the same threshold. That's impossible, Vox protested. Our species isn't undergoing any fundamental change. Not biologically, Takahashi agreed, but in consciousness, in awareness, in our capacity for understanding patterns beyond our own experience. She gestured to the vessel, where the mathematical forms continued to shift and evolve. The Zetkal exist primarily as pattern-based consciousness. They recognize that potential in the Cathri, and now they see it in both our species. They don't want to destroy us. They want to witness our evolution into something more. And if we are not interested in evolving? Vox asked skeptically. That's not how evolution works, Chancellor, I found myself saying. It happens whether we want it to or not. The Zakalas simply appreciate the process. The protrusion from the vessel suddenly expanded, flowing outward to create a larger, more complex structure. Within it, images began to form, not projections, but three-dimensional representations created from the same flowing material. I recognized Lamonia, seen from orbit, then Earth, then dozens, hundreds of other worlds, some familiar from Concord records, others completely unknown. The images shifted, showing species evolving, civilizations rising and falling, consciousness expanding in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. It was beautiful, terrifying, humbling. They are showing us the pattern, Ambassador Takahashi said softly. The grand design they have been witnessing for millions of years. We are part of it now, both our species, connected in ways we are only beginning to understand. High Chancellor Vox stood motionless, her usual imperial posture abandoned as she absorbed the implications of what we were seeing. What do they want from us? She finally asked. Nothing, Takahashi replied. They don't want or need anything from us. They simply appreciate what we might become. The display collapsed back into the vessel, leaving only the smooth, flowing surface. A final harmonic pattern emanated from it. Complex, multi-layered, yet somehow hopeful. Then, silently, the vessel began to rise. The others followed, all seven ascending in perfect formation until they were once again high above the plaza. They are leaving? Vox asked, confusion evident in her voice. Their observation is complete, Takahashi explained. They will continue monitoring from a distance, but direct contact has served its purpose. Which was what, exactly? Ambassador Takahashi turned to look directly at the Chancellor, then at me. To connect our species, to show us that we are on parallel paths, that together we might understand patterns neither of us could comprehend alone. The Zetel vessels accelerated upward, becoming points of light against the darkening sky before disappearing completely. The strange atmospheric effects began to fade, returning Lamonia's sky to its natural color. In the silence that followed, I found myself standing between Ambassador Takahashi and High Chancellor Vox, between Earth and Lamonia, between speaking and listening, between what we were and what we might become. So, I said finally, unable to resist breaking the tension, I assume I'm still fired. Vox's neck membranes flushed with what might have been amusement. That depends, Interpreter Torah. How do you feel about a new assignment? It seems we have much to discuss with our friends from Earth. Ambassador Takahashi smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. The first human diplomat didn't speak, she said. She listened. And it turns out that was exactly what the universe needed. I looked from one to the other, these representatives of two very different worlds, now connected by an encounter neither could have predicted. Well, I said, I suppose someone needs to interpret all those patterns we are apparently sharing. As we walked back across the plaza where humans and Lamonians were already gathering in excited discussion, I couldn't help but reflect on the strange path that had brought us here. From the rumors of chattering primates to the silent communication with cosmic observers, it had been a journey of contradictions and surprises. The Zactyl had shown us glimpses of what we might become. Not separate species competing for resources or dominance, but partners in a greater pattern, one that required both our unique perspectives to fully comprehend. The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for us to stop talking long enough to truly hear each other. And sometimes, it takes a species known for talking too much to teach the rest of us how to listen.